The chandeliers sparkled, the orchestra played, and the city's wealthiest gathered in gowns and tuxedos for a night of prestige. But in the middle of the glittering crowd, one man carried trays of champagne. To the guests, he was invisible. To the security guard, he was nothing more than the delivery boy. What no one knew was that the man they mocked owned far more than the trays in his hands. He owned the company serving their food. He owned the very hall they stood in. And before the night was over, the truth would silence every sneer in the room. This is the story of Marcus Alvarez, a man who rose from humiliation, fought through years of struggle, and turned every insult into the foundation of an empire. Stay with us as we uncover his journey, from poverty, to resilience, to the unforgettable night when a delivery boy revealed himself as the master of the Gala. Because sometimes, the greatest power isn't in being seen. It's in being underestimated, until the moment no one can ignore you. The chandelier glistened like frozen fire, each crystal refracting light into 1,000 directions across the ballroom. Velvet curtains framed the tall windows, gold leaf trim curled along the ceiling, and laughter rang like silver bells against marble walls. This was no ordinary night in the city. It was a gala, the kind where names mattered more than faces, where labels on clothing whispered louder than voices, and where entry itself was a privilege. Marcus Alvarez adjusted the weight of the tray in his hands. A pyramid of delicate champagne flutes rattled slightly as he steadied them with practiced ease. His dark suit was crisp, though modest, his shoes polished until they reflected the glow of the chandeliers. He looked every bit the part of a worker, efficient, invisible, necessary, yet unnoticed. But to the guests, he wasn't Marcus Alvarez, entrepreneur, strategist, and survivor of 1,000 battles with fate. To them, he was just another delivery boy. And that was exactly how he wanted it, for now. "Hey! You!" The voice cut through the hum of violins and murmurs. Marcus turned his head slowly to see a tall security guard stepping into his path. The man's expression was sharp, his jaw set in the smug way of someone who believed authority was ownership. His badge gleamed under the light, and his hand rested casually on his belt, like he was daring Marcus to test him. "Delivery boy," the guard continued, his tone thick with disdain. "Wrong door. Staff entrance is in the back. You don't belong here." Marcus let the words settle, let the silence after them stretch long enough to make the guard uncomfortable. His eyes were steady, his breathing calm, but inside, a storm churned. He had heard this all before. Too many times. Each insult carved into him like a blade, but over the years, he had learned not to bleed where others could see. He gave a small nod, no hint of defiance, no spark of anger. "I'll keep that in mind," he said quietly, shifting the tray in his hands. The guard smirked, satisfied, and waved him on. "Don't get too comfortable in here. This isn't your world." If only he knew. To Marcus, this world was familiar. Not because he had been born into it, but because he had clawed his way up from the dirt beneath it. He remembered the nights of working 3 jobs just to cover rent, the evenings when dinner was stale bread and black coffee, the mornings when he rose before the sun to haul boxes heavier than his body. Those days had taught him humility. They had also taught him endurance. He had started as a delivery boy, literally. Running orders for local restaurants, biking through rain and snow, dodging cars and insults alike. The world had never looked at him as anything more. But in silence, away from the jeers and dismissals, Marcus had built something. Piece by piece, job by job, mistake by mistake, he learned the business. He saved every extra dollar, studied contracts, built relationships with small vendors. And slowly, brick by brick, he created a company of his own. Tonight was not just another event. Tonight, his company was catering the most prestigious gala of the season. And 3 months ago, Marcus had done something that no one in this room would have believed possible. He had purchased the very venue they stood in. The contract had been signed quietly, the announcement delayed. He had his reasons. He didn't need the applause. Not yet. But the security guard, with his mocking smile and careless tone, had no idea that the man carrying a tray of glasses tonight owned not just the food being served, but the ground beneath his polished shoes. As Marcus wove through the crowd, guests barely glanced at him. To them, he was background noise, like the clinking of dishes, like the hum of the AC. They laughed in designer gowns and tuxedos, sipping wine that cost more than Marcus used to make in a month. They spoke of deals and vacations, investments and inheritances, their voices carrying the weight of entitlement. "Another refill," one woman said without looking at him, tapping her empty glass against the tray. Marcus offered a polite nod, his voice smooth. "Of course." He poured the champagne with steady hands, careful not to spill a drop. She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. In her mind, he was just there to serve. But Marcus felt no anger. Not tonight. He had learned long ago that power isn't loud. Real power doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to boast. Real power can smile politely, bow its head, and still own the room. As he moved, Marcus's thoughts drifted back to the beginning. He had been 19, broke, and desperate when he first got into catering. At the time, it wasn't catering, it was hustling food out of his cousin's kitchen, delivering trays of tamales to construction sites, bringing boxed lunches to office clerks who barely looked up from their desks. But the food was good, the service better, and word spread. By 25, he had a small team. By 30, he had contracts with mid-sized events. And now, at 34, he stood in a ballroom worth millions, serving guests who believed he was beneath them, while knowing quietly, secretly, that this was his empire. Every insult from the past had built him into this man. Every rejection had sharpened him. And though his suit tonight looked like that of a delivery boy, beneath it beat the heart of a man who owned far more than anyone suspected. As the night wore on, Marcus felt the weight of eyes on him. The same guard leaned against a marble column, watching him like a hawk. Every step Marcus took, every tray he carried, the guard seemed to look for a misstep, a reason to assert dominance again. When Marcus passed near, the guard muttered, "Careful you don't drop anything. These people can smell incompetence from a mile away." Marcus allowed himself the faintest smile. "I'll keep that in mind," he replied smoothly, and kept walking. Inside, he thought, and soon, you'll keep something else in mind, the name Alvarez, written on the deed to this very hall. The music swelled, and a voice called for attention from the stage. The host of the evening, a man in a silver tuxedo, stepped forward to welcome the crowd. Applause rippled through the room, glasses clinked, and the spotlight shifted across the ballroom. Marcus paused, tray in hand, standing just outside the glow of the light. He looked out at the glittering sea of faces, each one oblivious. The guard's laughter echoed in his memory. "This isn't your world." Marcus tightened his grip on the tray. "No," he thought. "It isn't. It's mine." And as the host prepared to announce the names of those who made the evening possible, Marcus knew that before the night ended, the truth would surface. The world would know exactly who he was. But for now, he waited, calm, silent, invisible. Because sometimes, the greatest power lies in letting others underestimate you, until the moment they can't anymore. The night deepened, and the ballroom shimmered brighter with each passing hour. Laughter grew louder, the air thicker with perfume, wine, and the quiet arrogance of wealth. The gala was alive, but to Marcus Alvarez, it felt like walking through glass. Every glance thrown his way was sharp, cutting him into pieces, reminding him where they believed he belonged. He carried another tray of canapés, weaving through silk gowns and polished shoes, listening without meaning to. Conversations floated like smoke, stocks, politics, vacations and villas that cost more than he had once dreamed of earning in a lifetime. And then came the words that stung. "Delivery boy," a man chuckled, loud enough for Marcus to hear. "They let anyone in here these days." The man's companion laughed, waving dismissively at Marcus as if swatting at an insect. Neither knew who he was. Neither cared. Marcus lowered his eyes, though not in shame. He had learned the art of invisibility long ago. Let them underestimate him. Let them laugh. They would see soon enough. The same security guard from before hadn't let up. He was a shadow at the edge of Marcus's every move. Watching, waiting, daring him to falter. At one point, Marcus set down a tray on a table near the champagne fountain. The guard appeared instantly, looming over him. "You spill one glass," the guard sneered, "and I'll have you out of here before you can blink. You get that?" Marcus looked up slowly, calm as still water. "Crystal clear," he said evenly. The guard smirked, as if mistaking Marcus's quiet for submission. He leaned closer, his breath heavy with disdain. "You think carrying food around makes you part of this? These people don't even see you. You're nothing but background noise." Marcus held his gaze for just a moment, long enough for the silence to speak louder than words. Then he turned back to his tray. "Enjoy the evening," he murmured. Inside, his thoughts burned. Funny thing about background noise. Sometimes it's the hum that powers the whole machine. Marcus moved through the crowd, silent, listening. People revealed themselves when they thought you were invisible. "I told them I don't eat gluten," one woman hissed. "And yet here's bread on every tray. Can't even follow simple instructions." "Do they even train these staff?" another man complained. "Useless." Their words floated around Marcus like daggers, but he didn't flinch. He remembered when words had cut deeper, when he was a teenager working his first job and his boss had called him stupid in front of a full kitchen staff. Back then, the insult had felt like truth. Now, he knew better. Words said more about the speaker than the target. And still, the sting of assumption lingered. What none of them noticed was the way Marcus moved. Not like a worker unfamiliar with wealth, but like someone who had studied it. He carried himself with a composure that belied his clothes, with a confidence that seemed too large for the tray in his hands. He noticed details others overlooked, the slight flicker in the lights above table 7, the nervous tapping of the violinist's bow against the stand, the anxious look of a young server who had just spilled water on a guest's shoes. Marcus drifted over, subtle, and whispered to the server, "Breathe. Smile. Apologize once, then move on. Don't let it break you." The young man looked at him, startled, but nodded, steadying himself. The guest didn't even notice. But Marcus did. He remembered when he had been that boy, terrified of mistakes, drowning in shame. And he remembered the first time someone had told him to breathe. Later, while replenishing hors d'oeuvres, Marcus overheard two men by the bar. "You see that guy," one said, nodding toward Marcus. "Bet he makes less in a year than I spent on this suit." The other laughed. "Delivery boy, huh? Wonder if he even finished school." Marcus's jaw tightened, but his face remained smooth. He poured another glass, handed it off, and walked away as though the words hadn't landed. But inside, his chest burned. Not from shame, from memory. They didn't know. They didn't know about the nights he had studied contracts by candlelight, teaching himself clauses and fine print. They didn't know about the years he had gone without vacations, without luxuries, investing every spare cent back into his business. They didn't know how many people now depended on him: cooks, servers, drivers, vendors. And they didn't know that the ink was barely dry on the contract that made him the owner of the very hall in which they stood. He wanted to tell them. To shout it. But no. Not yet. Patience was power. As the orchestra shifted into a softer piece, Marcus moved toward the back of the room, near the kitchens. He paused for a moment, tray empty, and leaned against the doorframe. From here, he could see it all: the glitter, the laughter, the casual cruelty, the fragile egos hidden behind diamonds and tuxedos. He thought of his mother. How she had worked cleaning houses, never once treated as an equal. How she had told him, "People will always see what they want. You must know who you are, even when they don't." Marcus closed his eyes, just for a breath, and whispered under his breath, "I know who I am." Then he straightened, lifted another tray, and stepped back into the fray. At that very moment, the host stepped back onto the stage. His voice boomed across the ballroom, calling for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight, we have the privilege of honoring the companies and individuals who made this event possible. Without them, none of this would have happened." Applause thundered through the hall. Glasses clinked. Guests leaned in eagerly to hear the names. Marcus stood near the edge of the room, tray balanced, eyes calm. The guard smirked at him again from across the room, mouthing the words, "Delivery boy." Marcus's lips curved into the faintest smile. Because he knew what was coming. He knew his name would soon echo across this room like a stone dropped into still water. And when it did, the ripples would drown every sneer, every insult, every assumption. But for now, he waited. Silent. Patient. Invisible. Because sometimes, justice is sweetest when it arrives exactly at the moment no one expects it. The kitchen was a storm compared to the ballroom's elegance. Steam hissed, pans clanged, voices rose and fell in hurried commands. Waiters rushed in and out, balancing trays, while chefs barked orders over the roar of ovens. Marcus stepped inside, setting down an empty tray, and the atmosphere shifted, just slightly. "Marcus," one of the line cooks called, relief in his tone, "the garnish for table 12 is running out. We're 3 plates short." Without hesitation, Marcus crossed the kitchen, grabbed a handful of ingredients, and with practiced precision, finished plating the dishes. His hands moved faster than most chefs in the room, his motions crisp, confident. He slid the plates onto a tray and handed them off. The young cook stared at him. "How'd you?" "Keep moving," Marcus said quietly, offering a faint smile. To the guests in the ballroom, Marcus was just another worker. To the kitchen staff, he was something else, someone they respected, even leaned on. But no one asked questions. Not yet. Near the swinging doors, the event coordinator appeared, panic in her eyes. "Marcus, thank God. The floral arrangements near the stage are collapsing. Do you?" She stopped herself, glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Do you think you can handle it?" Marcus nodded once. "Give me 10 minutes." He strode out, weaving through the tables with quiet authority. Guests barely looked at him, assuming he was just fixing another detail. But the staff noticed. A true delivery boy wouldn't be trusted with decor near the main stage. And yet here Marcus was, kneeling by the flowers, adjusting stems with a precision that made the entire arrangement look intentional rather than broken. When the spotlight swept the stage a moment later, the backdrop appeared flawless, as though it had never been disturbed. From the corner, a waiter whispered to another, "How does he know how to do all that?" The other shrugged. "Beats me. But he's not like the rest of us." Back in the ballroom, Marcus spotted a server frozen in panic. A guest had just asked for a dish not listed on the menu, something vegan, gluten-free, nut-free. The young server fumbled, stammering, ready to run back to the kitchen. Marcus stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Tell them it will take a few minutes, but we'll prepare something special. Then go straight to Chef Anita, she has the quinoa set aside. Add the roasted vegetables, no garnish." "Got it." The server blinked. How do you know?" "Trust me," Marcus said calmly. Minutes later, the dish was served, and the guest beamed with satisfaction. The server looked at Marcus like he had just performed magic. "You're not just a server, are you?" the young man whispered. Marcus offered a small smile. "Just someone who pays attention." From across the room, the security guard watched these moments. His smirk faded into a frown. Why were staff listening to this delivery boy? Why did they look relieved when he arrived? He approached Marcus again, voice low but edged with suspicion. "You've been busy tonight," the guard muttered. "A little too busy for someone who's just supposed to drop things off." Marcus tilted his head slightly, calm as ever. "Maybe I just like helping where I can." The guard narrowed his eyes. "Yeah. Or maybe you're up to something." Marcus didn't answer. He simply turned away, tray balanced effortlessly in his hands, leaving the guard simmering in confusion. By now, whispers had spread among the staff. "Who is he really? Did you see the way he fixed that arrangement? He knew the menu better than the chefs." But Marcus never confirmed or denied anything. He moved with quiet composure, offering guidance, solving problems, listening more than he spoke. Every action was a seed, small, almost invisible to the guests, but obvious to those working behind the scenes. As Marcus refilled glasses at one table, he overheard a conversation that pulled him back in time. "Had to fire my driver," a wealthy man said casually, sipping his drink. "Couldn't even manage to show up on time. People like that are replaceable. There's always another delivery boy waiting in line." The words pierced Marcus, not because they hurt now, but because they reminded him of the past. He remembered when he had been that boy, late not from laziness, but from exhaustion after working 2 jobs back to back. He remembered the sting of being called replaceable, the ache of believing it might be true. He had vowed, years ago, never to let anyone make him feel disposable again. And tonight, he would prove it. Later, as the orchestra played, disaster struck. A tray of glasses slipped from a server's hands, shattering across the marble floor. The room gasped. The server froze, face pale, as whispers rose from the guests. Before anyone could react, Marcus was there. He crouched low, speaking softly to the server. "It's okay. Accidents happen. Breathe. Stand tall." Then he motioned to 2 others. "Sweep from the edges, keep guests clear. Someone fetch a mop." His voice was calm but firm, cutting through the panic. Within minutes, the mess was cleared, and the music flowed again as though nothing had happened. The server whispered, eyes wide, "Thank you, sir." "Sir. Not delivery boy." The word slipped out instinctively, as if the young man's heart recognized something his mind hadn't yet processed. By now, the security guard wasn't just mocking Marcus, he was watching him, puzzled, unsettled. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how a delivery boy acted. The guard muttered under his breath, "Who the hell are you?" Marcus, across the room, felt the weight of those words, though he didn't hear them. He simply continued his silent work, waiting for the right moment. Because soon, very soon, the seeds he had planted would bloom into revelation. And when they did, the guard's sneer, and every insult whispered tonight, would collapse like glass underfoot. Long before Marcus Alvarez carried trays through gilded ballrooms, he carried bags of groceries in paper-thin plastic for neighbors too tired to climb stairs. His world had been a cramped apartment on the edge of the city, where peeling paint lined the walls and the hum of traffic was the lullaby that put him to sleep each night. His mother worked as a cleaner. His father had disappeared before Marcus could form a memory. The money she earned stretched thinner than the bread on their table. Some nights, there wasn't enough. Marcus learned hunger before he learned luxury. He learned silence before he learned comfort. And yet, in those shadows, he also learned something else, resilience. At 14, while other kids played after school, Marcus swept floors at a corner store. He mopped aisles until his back ached, earning coins that jingled like tiny victories in his pocket. At 16, he took on deliveries, pedaling his bike through sleet and rain, a bag strapped to his back, drivers honking as if his presence was an inconvenience. He learned quickly what people thought of delivery boys: invisible when on time, disposable when late. Worthless, one man had muttered when Marcus, drenched and shivering, delivered his order 5 minutes behind schedule. The word clung to him like the cold rain soaking his clothes. Marcus never forgot. But instead of letting it crush him, he stored it away, like fuel. Humiliation followed him like a shadow in those years. There was the night he stood in line for his paycheck at the diner where he washed dishes, only to hear the manager say, "Don't expect a raise. You're lucky we even keep you here." There was the time he carried food into a high-rise office, and the receptionist refused to look at him, sliding the tip across the counter with 2 fingers as though touching him might leave a stain. And there was the gala he had once delivered to, years before tonight, when a guard had laughed at him, "One day late and you'll be out on the street. Guys like you are a dime a dozen." Marcus had smiled politely, but inside, something hardened. If he was a dime a dozen, then he would make himself into the rare coin no one could afford to ignore. His first catering job was accidental. A neighbor, overwhelmed at planning her daughter's quinceañera, begged Marcus's mother for help. His mother roped him in, asking Marcus to set up tables, carry trays, keep things moving. Marcus didn't just help, he noticed. He noticed how people lingered longer when the food was presented neatly, how guests lit up when the servers smiled, how the entire event flowed better when details were handled quietly, invisibly. That night, he stayed long after the music ended, sweeping floors, stacking chairs, wiping surfaces until they gleamed. The neighbor pressed a $20 bill into his hand, her eyes grateful. "You made this work," she whispered. It wasn't just money. It was recognition. And for Marcus, it was the first whisper of possibility. Maybe he could do this. Not just work an event, run one. He began small. Selling boxed lunches from his mother's kitchen. Borrowing her old pots, cooking in batches, delivering meals to construction workers who wanted food that tasted like home. The money was modest, but steady. By 21, he saved enough to buy second-hand catering equipment. By 23, he had a beat-up van with his company's name hand-painted on the side, Alvarez Catering. The paint chipped, the van rattled, but it was his. Mistakes came like storms. He undercooked food once at a wedding, nearly ruining the night. He miscalculated supplies for a graduation party, leaving tables short. Each failure hurt, but Marcus didn't fold. He learned. He adapted. For every insult that reminded him of who he was supposed to be, a delivery boy, invisible, replaceable, he built another layer of who he was becoming. There were nights he didn't sleep at all. He worked the cafe from dawn to afternoon, delivered food until evening, then planned catering menus long after midnight. Coffee kept him awake. Fear kept him moving. Fear of failure. Fear of being trapped in the cycle his mother had endured, cleaning the messes of others until her hands cracked and bled. He promised himself, whispered into the dark, "This won't be my ending. I'll build something that can't be taken away from me." By his late 20s, word of mouth carried his name further than his van ever could. People didn't just hire Marcus because his food was good, they hired him because he cared. He stayed until the last table was cleared. He comforted nervous brides, fixed broken decorations, solved problems that weren't his to solve. Guests began saying things like, "He runs his events better than anyone else." Marcus never bragged. He just smiled, thanked them, and kept working. Inside, though, he knew, the boy once called worthless was becoming a man of worth. Contracts grew larger. Events more prestigious. He hired staff, built teams, trained them not just to serve food, but to serve dignity. He told them, "We don't just deliver meals. We deliver memories." Every dollar earned was reinvested. New vans, better equipment, a proper office. By 30, Alvarez Catering wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And yet, despite all the success, Marcus never forgot the sting of humiliation. He never forgot the guard's sneer, the boss's words, the receptionist's disdain. Those scars remained, not as wounds, but as reminders. They reminded him why respect mattered. Why no one, regardless of uniform, should be dismissed. When the chance came to buy the grand venue, the very one where tonight's gala was being held, Marcus hesitated only for a moment. The price was staggering. The risk enormous. But he thought of his mother, of his younger self with rain dripping down his jacket, called worthless for being 5 minutes late. And he signed the papers. The deed bore his name, Marcus Alvarez. It wasn't just property. It was vindication. Proof that the boy from the edges of the city had climbed to the very center, not by privilege, but by persistence. Back in the present, as Marcus carried another tray through the glittering ballroom, his past clung to him like an invisible cloak. Every sneer tonight echoed the voices of his youth. Every insult reminded him of the boy they had once tried to break. But that boy had become a man. And that man had built an empire from nothing. They didn't know yet. They still saw only the delivery boy. But soon, very soon, the world would see him as he truly was. And when they did, every humiliation, every insult, every moment of invisibility would transform into a story of resilience so powerful that no one could ignore it. The night had been polished, smooth, and glittering, until the cracks began to show. At first, it was small. A whispered complaint here, a glance of frustration there. It began with the missing hors d'oeuvres. One of the waiters rushed through the kitchen doors, panic in his voice. "Table 15 is furious. Their tray never arrived, they've been waiting 30 minutes. The chef cursed under her breath. "We prepared it. It should have gone out already." Marcus, balancing a tray of glasses, glanced over. His tone was calm, steady, the kind of voice that cut through chaos. "Check the cold storage," he said. "Bottom shelf. Someone probably set it aside and forgot." The waiter blinked, then nodded and sprinted off. Moments later, he returned with the missing tray, relief flooding his face. Crisis averted. Marcus didn't need applause. He simply adjusted his tray and moved back toward the ballroom. But trouble never arrives alone. At one of the center tables, a wealthy guest snapped her fingers as Marcus passed. Her gown shimmered, her diamonds heavy around her neck. "You," she said, her voice sharp. "I asked for something vegan. Gluten-free. Organic. None of this processed nonsense." She gestured at the food on the table as though it were garbage. The server beside her paled, stammering. "Ma'am, the kitchen." "I don't care about the kitchen," she interrupted. "Fix it. Now." The server froze. Marcus stepped in, his voice smooth as silk. "Of course, ma'am. We'll prepare something special. Just for you." The woman looked at him with skepticism, then waved dismissively. "Hurry." Marcus turned, walking calmly back toward the kitchen. On the way, he murmured to the young server, "Quinoa with roasted vegetables. No garnish. Tell Chef Anita." The server blinked. "You already knew?" Marcus gave a faint smile. "Always anticipate. Always prepare." Minutes later, the dish was served. The guest took one bite and, though she didn't thank him, her face softened. She nodded slightly, as if satisfied. The server glanced at Marcus with quiet awe. Just as the tension began to ease, disaster struck again. The lights above the stage flickered, once, twice, then went dark. Gasps rippled across the ballroom. The orchestra faltered. A murmur of discontent spread like wildfire. The host's voice rang out nervously, "It seems we're having a technical issue." Guests grumbled, fanning themselves, turning their irritation toward the staff. Marcus moved quickly, slipping into the side hall where the electrical panels were hidden. A technician was already there, sweating, fumbling with wires. "Breaker tripped," the man muttered. "But I can't stabilize it. We're overloaded." Marcus crouched beside him. He had studied this building before, every system, every blueprint. He knew its bones better than anyone. "Reroute from Panel B," Marcus instructed. "Shut off the secondary hall lights, they won't notice. Redirect to the main ballroom." The technician hesitated, then obeyed. Within minutes, the chandeliers blazed back to life, brighter than before. Applause erupted from the crowd, though not for Marcus. No one knew who had fixed it. But the staff knew. The technician looked at Marcus with a mix of confusion and respect. "How did you?" Marcus stood, brushing off his suit. "I've spent time here," he said simply. Despite his quiet rescues, the guest's perception never shifted. One man leaned over to his companion, nodding at Marcus as he passed. "Funny, isn't it? Delivery boy playing hero tonight. Thinks he runs the place." The other chuckled. "Let him enjoy it. He'll still go home with crumbs." Their laughter rang in Marcus's ears, but he didn't slow his stride. Inside, his thoughts sharpened. If only you knew whose name is on the deed you toast beneath. And then came the inevitable. The security guard stepped directly into Marcus's path, his smirk curling like smoke. "Busy night for you, delivery boy," he drawled. "Fixing food, fixing lights, fixing flowers. What's next? You going to run the gala too?" Marcus's expression remained calm. "Just doing my job." The guard leaned closer, his voice low, poisonous. "Here's some advice, stick to your deliveries. Don't start thinking you're part of this world. Because you're not." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The guard's eyes were hard, daring Marcus to react, to break. But Marcus only tilted his head slightly, his voice steady, quiet, and edged with meaning. "You'd be surprised what world I belong to." Then he stepped around the guard, leaving him staring, unsettled. Back in the ballroom, the orchestra played on, the chandeliers glowed, the laughter resumed. But beneath the glitter, tension hummed. Marcus had smoothed every wrinkle, solved every crisis, carried the weight of the night on his shoulders. And still, to the guests, he was nothing more than a delivery boy. The guard's words echoed in his mind, "Stick to your deliveries." Marcus allowed himself the faintest smile. Soon, the guard, and everyone else in this room, would discover the truth. And when they did, the balance of power would shift so completely that this night would never be forgotten. The music quieted. The orchestra's final note lingered in the air as the host of the evening stepped onto the stage, his silver tuxedo glittering beneath the chandeliers. He lifted the microphone, his voice smooth and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" The ballroom hushed. Glasses stilled, conversations fell silent, all eyes shifting toward the stage. It is my privilege tonight to thank the incredible partners who made this gala possible. From the decor to the service to the very roof above us, this event would not exist without their dedication and generosity. Polite applause rippled through the room. Marcus stood at the edge of the crowd, tray balanced in his hands, eyes steady. His heartbeat drummed quietly, but his face remained unreadable. He knew what was coming. The host continued, reading off a short list of sponsors and partners. Each name earned a burst of applause, nods of approval, polite smiles. "And finally," the host said, his tone swelling with importance, "we must recognize the remarkable individual whose vision and hard work not only provided tonight's catering, but secured this very venue for the future. A man of perseverance. A name you may not yet know, but one you certainly will." Murmurs rose across the room. Guests leaned in, curious. The security guard, posted near the entrance, glanced toward the stage, his brow furrowed. The host smiled. "Please join me in welcoming Marcus Alvarez." The name struck the room like thunder. Gasps broke out, eyes darted, whispers collided in disbelief. "Marcus, who? Where is he? Never heard of him." And then, slowly, as though guided by an invisible hand, all eyes turned toward the man in the dark suit. The man balancing a tray. The man who, until this moment, had been nothing more than the delivery boy. Marcus Alvarez. Marcus set the tray down on a nearby table. The glasses rattled softly, the only sound in the silence that now filled the ballroom. He straightened, shoulders squared, and began to walk. Step by step, calm and measured, cutting a path through silks and tuxedos. Guests shifted aside, their disbelief palpable, their gazes locked on him. The murmurs grew louder. "That can't be right. The delivery guy? He owns this." Marcus climbed the steps to the stage. The host extended a hand, which Marcus shook with quiet composure. The spotlight blazed down on him, illuminating not just his figure, but the truth that could no longer be ignored. From the stage, Marcus looked out across the sea of glittering faces. He saw wide eyes, parted lips, jaws gone slack. And then he found the security guard. The man's face had drained of color, his smirk erased, his posture rigid. His eyes were wide, his lips trembling slightly as if caught between denial and horror. The man who had mocked, sneered, dismissed, now stood frozen, staring at the truth he could never take back. Marcus met his gaze, holding it steady. He didn't need words. The silence between them was enough. The host gestured grandly. Marcus Alvarez, owner of Alvarez Catering, and as of this year, the proud owner of this very venue. Applause erupted, hesitant at first, then louder as reality sank in. Some guests clapped awkwardly, others with genuine admiration. A few still stared, unable to reconcile the delivery boy with the man who now owned the hall around them. Marcus let the sound wash over him. He didn't bask in it, didn't gloat. He simply stood, calm and steady, the very picture of dignity. At the back of the room, the security guard lowered his gaze. His jaw worked silently, as if searching for an excuse, a defense. None came. His earlier words echoed in his own head, "Stick to your deliveries." Now, those words rang hollow. Meaningless. Because the man he had mocked was not just part of this world. He owned it. The ballroom was still. Every glass, every jewel, every heartbeat seemed suspended in the hush that followed Marcus's introduction. He stood beneath the chandeliers, the spotlight catching the faint gleam of sweat on his brow, though his posture was composed, steady, unshaken. For years, he had been the boy no one saw. Tonight, he was the man no one could ignore. Marcus leaned toward the microphone. His voice, when it came, was low and calm, but carried through the hall like a steady current. "Good evening. The word rippled across the silence. Hundreds of eyes fixed on him, waiting, doubting, curious. "I know what many of you are thinking," Marcus said, his tone measured, almost conversational. "You saw me tonight carrying trays, pouring champagne, moving quietly among you. And you assumed I was just another delivery boy. Invisible. Replaceable." A murmur swept the crowd. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Marcus continued, his eyes sweeping slowly across the audience. "It's not the first time I've been looked at that way. It won't be the last. But tonight, I have the chance to say something that matters, not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been judged by their uniform, or their silence, or their place in the room." He paused, glancing toward the side of the stage where kitchen staff peeked out nervously, their aprons still dusted with flour, their hands trembling with the surprise of seeing Marcus revealed. "I want to thank my team," Marcus said, his voice warming. "The men and women who worked tirelessly tonight, and who work tirelessly every day. They are the heartbeat of every event, the ones who turn chaos into harmony, the ones who make nights like this possible." Applause began, hesitant but genuine, spreading like a spark across the ballroom. Servers in the back straightened, their eyes shining with pride. For once, the applause was for them. Marcus let the sound fade before continuing. His gaze sharpened. "I was once told I was worthless. That I was nothing more than a boy delivering food, replaceable, invisible. But what I learned is this: dignity does not come from titles. Respect is not given by uniforms. And worth is not determined by those who look down on you. Worth is earned every day by those who stand up, work hard, and build something from nothing." The words cut deep. Guests shifted, some lowering their eyes, recalling how they had dismissed him hours earlier. Marcus leaned slightly closer to the microphone. His tone softened, yet carried the weight of a hammer. "So never underestimate the hands that serve you. Because those hands may also own the table you eat at." The line hung in the air like a thunderclap. Gasps escaped lips. A murmur of astonishment swelled, then was drowned in the roar of applause. The orchestra, almost instinctively, struck a chord, triumphant, swelling. The ballroom erupted, not with polite clapping, but with something deeper. A recognition. A release. At the back of the room, the security guard stood frozen. His jaw clenched, his earlier sneer now ashes on his lips. He had mocked Marcus, dismissed him, told him to stick to deliveries. Now he watched, powerless, as the man he had humiliated stood center stage, commanding the respect of an entire hall. Marcus's eyes found him. For a heartbeat, they locked gazes. Marcus did not gloat. He did not need to. The truth itself was enough. The guard lowered his eyes. Marcus raised a hand, quieting the applause. "Tonight isn't about me," he said gently. "It's about remembering that every person, whether they're serving your drink, sweeping your floor, or standing at your door, deserves respect. Because behind every uniform is a story. And sometimes, behind those stories, there are dreams powerful enough to change everything." The applause rose again, louder, echoing against the marble walls. Guests stood, some reluctantly, others with tears glistening in their eyes. The staff, watching from the sides, clapped hardest of all. For them, this was more than a speech. It was vindication. As Marcus stepped back from the microphone, the host clasped his hand, whispering something lost beneath the roar of clapping. But Marcus didn't need the words. He could feel it. The shift. The turning of the tide. Tonight, the delivery boy had vanished forever. In his place stood a man who had turned humiliation into triumph, silence into authority, and invisibility into undeniable presence. And no one, not the guests, not the host, not even the guard, would ever forget it. The applause had faded, though its echoes still lingered in the grand ballroom. Guests had resumed their seats, their conversations hushed, softened, altered. Something had shifted in the air, a new weight, a quiet respect. Marcus stepped down from the stage, not to bask in admiration, but to return, calmly, to the very floor where he had been dismissed hours earlier. The marble felt different beneath his shoes now. Not because it had changed, but because they had. Near the entrance, the security guard stood rigid, shoulders tense, eyes lowered. His earlier arrogance had crumbled, replaced by something rawer, shame. As Marcus approached, the guard swallowed hard, his voice rough. "Mr. Alvarez," he hesitated, struggling for words. I was wrong. About you. About everything. I spoke out of place. And he paused, his jaw tight. "I'm sorry." Marcus studied him for a long moment. The memory of sneers, insults, dismissals pressed to the edges of his mind. He could have gloated. He could have crushed the man with a single sentence. Instead, Marcus's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Respect isn't about titles," he said quietly. "It's about how you treat people, especially when you think no one's watching." The guard nodded, his head bowing lower. The apology was imperfect, but it was real. And in that moment, Marcus knew the man had learned something he might never forget. Later that night, as the gala wound down and guests departed beneath the glittering chandeliers, Marcus stood alone for a moment in the quiet hall. He thought of his mother, scrubbing floors until her hands cracked. He thought of the teenage boy pedaling through rain, delivering food with empty pockets. He thought of every insult, every humiliation, every time someone had told him he didn't belong. And he thought of now, standing here, not as a boy defined by others' opinions, but as a man defined by his own resilience. His journey had not been about revenge. It had been about building. About proving, first to himself, and then to the world, that dignity can grow from the hardest soil, and that respect must be demanded not by arrogance, but by persistence and truth. Marcus's words from the stage echoed in his own mind, "Never underestimate the hands that serve you." Because behind every server, every cleaner, every guard, every worker dismissed as background noise, there is a story. A dream. A dignity that no sneer can erase. And sometimes, those quiet, overlooked hands are the very ones shaping the world. As Marcus left the hall that night, his heart was steady, his steps calm. He had faced humiliation, turned it into power, and left behind a message that would outlast the evening. And now, the story rests with us. Have you ever been dismissed, underestimated, or told you didn't belong? How did you rise above it? What lessons did you carry forward? Share your story. Because stories like these don't just belong to Marcus, they belong to all of us. The ballroom emptied, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the lingering warmth of applause. Marcus stood for a moment in the quiet, gazing up at the chandeliers that once felt so far out of reach. They glittered now not as symbols of a world that excluded him, but as reminders of what resilience could build. He thought of where he began, the boy dismissed as worthless, the worker mocked as invisible, the man told to stick to deliveries. And he thought of where he stood now, not above others, but alongside them, a testament to what perseverance and dignity could create. Marcus smiled faintly, not out of triumph, but out of peace. He had proven his worth long ago. Tonight, the world had simply caught up. And as he walked out into the cool night air, one truth remained clear. Respect costs nothing, yet it changes everything. So the next time someone serves your drink, clears your table, or carries your delivery, look closer. Behind every uniform is a story. Behind every pair of hands is a dream. And sometimes, those dreams are powerful enough to own the very table you eat at. Sparkles, what about you? Have you ever been underestimated, told you didn't belong, or dismissed before your story was even heard? How did you rise above it? Share your journey in the comments, because stories like these don't just belong to Marcus. They belong to all of us.